Hello. Just going through some of my favourite singles from the 70s, based mainly the 70s. A couple from the 60s, and I think a couple from the 80s. The Great Australian Band, The Church, Under the Milky Way. Australian New Zealand band, My Sex, Computer Games. Computer Games. Excellent stuff. Tragically, the singer was killed in a car accident not long after it was a very big hit in Australasia. The wonderful John Cooper Clarke. I saw him 3 times. Out of Manchester, poet laureate of Britain. His book, 10 Years in an Open Neck Shirt, is what got him nominated. And I saw him twice at the Trade Union Club in Sydney in the early 80s when he was just on speed. If you don't know him, he's sort of like I don't know, Bob Dylan circa 66. Going off his head on speed and just funny jokes. Just great entertainer. On his own, just him and a tape machine, and away he'd go. And he had the audience wrapped around his skinny little fingers, I'll tell you now. The last time I saw him in Canberra in '84, I think, he was on the smack, and he was still great. He's still great. He's always great, but he was definitely showing signs of wear and tear, and he ended up living with Nico out of the Velvet Underground. A platonic relationship, and both terrible junkies, of course. Now, who remembers this? The Normal, Warm Leatherette. This is probably the most moronic 2 or 3 note single ever made on the Great Mute label. What can you say about this? It's like Kraftwerk's inbred hillbilly cousins from somewhere, around the Hamburg area. Mr. John Dowie, another close shave. Now, this is a great little EP. Very sarcastic. British Tourist, Naked Noolies in the Moonlight, I Don't Want to Be Your Amputee, Mew Wave, Jim Callaghan, who was the sad sack Prime Minister of Britain at the time, and Time Warp. Great, sarcastic, wonderful. This I adore beyond belief. Wire, Eardrum Buzz. Yes, the mighty Wire. I remember when I was in the West Country in England in '78, near down in the West Country, in Cornwall, or no, Devon, I don't know, something like that. And it had their album in a little record shop. I always remember it. It was called Pink Flag or something. It was a beautiful album cover. This is so good. Eardrum Buzz, Wire, great band. Now here's John Cale, who I featured recently, Animal Justice EP. Side 1, Chicken Shit, that's awful. Memphis, Side 2, Heather Gabler. Oh my God, that is so good. So good. Yeah, John Cale. Reckless Eric, One Hit Wonder, The Whole Wide World, and Semaphore singles on the B-side on the mighty, wonderful Stiff label. If you ever see his autobiography by Reckless Eric, do yourself a favour and buy it. It is beautiful stuff. The wonderful Snakefinger, who made the Residents' early albums listenable. Unfortunately, he died he came out to Australia on the wonderful Ralph Records. He came out to Australia and had a heart attack and died not long after. He was only 38 years old, but a wonderful, ingenious guitar player. He had his own sound, and the Resonance weren't anything without him, really. Who remembers this one? Dinosaur Jr., Just Like Heaven, a copy of, I think it's a Cure song, Just Like Heaven. And this just shits all over the Cure's version, absolutely shits on it. It's, on SST. And probably a bit collectible. Red vinyl, Just Like Heaven, Dinosaur Jr. Yep, I love these things. I'm a 45 guy. I love singles. You know, albums to me are there's always a few tracks or a couple of tracks that just ruin an album for me. There's only a few, Blonde on Blonde. We all know the ones where even the weak tracks are still great. So, the wonderful, my favourite writer probably ever, Charles Bukowski. This is a flexi disc. Reading Love and Fame and Death is taken from Charles Bukowski's book Burning in Water, Drowning in Flame. Yeah, this came with Beat Scene magazine number 12 in 1990. Little floppy disc. Yes, the wonderful Charles Bukowski. This one's out of order. It's not got nothing to do with these, mainly 1970s, but I got a little story about an immaculate condition. I think I'll be selling this one on the wonderful Australian Spin label, which the not the Easy Beats, the Bee Gees were on before they went to England. He had his first two hits. Ronnie Burns, he's an Australian pop star from Melbourne. His first two hits were written by the Bee Gees, and they were great songs. I think the Bee Gees actually, Coal Man and All the King's Horses, I think is the other one. No, hang on, Coal Man and whatever. All the King's Horses. That's not right. Coal Man and doesn't matter. I've had a few beers. He had big hits with them, and they're both Bee Gees songs. And I think the Bee Gees actually had them on some of their albums. So when you hear Ronnie Burns, it's him with the Bee Gees doing the backing vocals. The story I got about him is poor old Ronnie. By 1969, it was sort of very unhip, you know, because he was part of the pop scene. His first band was called The Flies back in 1964. They had the longest hair in Australia, you know, really, but their record was rubbish. But yeah, so 69, I saw the last appearance of the Masters Apprentices, the mighty Australian band, before they headed off to England to record at Abbey Road Studios, and it was at Cronulla's Lifesaving Club, which is a famous 7-mile long beach just south of Sydney, in the area where I grew up. And I grew up in the best city in the world, mate. What city has something like 40 or 50 beaches from top to bottom? None. There's no better city on earth than Sydney. Yes, unfortunately for Ronnie Burns, he was on just before the Masters Apprentices came on, and he was dressed up in all his pop star finery, and I wasn't part of it. The guys I was hanging around with were a bunch of roughies, and they came along well prepared with bags of rotten tomatoes and things, and they pounded this guy with rotten tomatoes, and you know, I thought it was very disrespectful. I wasn't involved in it. But what they didn't realise is this guy's like a 5th Dan black belt karate expert. They were lucky not to get their heads kicked in. The Bureau. Now, This was a huge #1 hit in Australia, only for sheep. Now, mainly because people laugh and say, well, Australia's got, 100 times, there's 100 sheep for every human in Australia. But this is just such a great record. It's right up there with, all that early two-tone stuff. And, oh man, this is such a good single. So good. It's Only for Sheep, the Bureau. And not only that, look at the label. It's one. Look at that. What? This is so good. I cannot recommend this enough. I cannot believe this was not a hit in England or Britain, UK, I should say. I mean, like, it's up there with the Specials, all that stuff. What a great, great single. And to finish up, the Pink Parker, Graham Parker. Now, he sort of wasn't very hip. He put on even his sunglasses aren't hip, but he sure had a great backing band. Brinsley Schwartz, Bob Andrews, Steve Goulding, Andrew Bodnar, and Martin Belmont. So, what I love about this is side one, Hold Back Tonight, Let Me Get Sweet on You. Side two, White Honey Live and Soul Shoes Live. This guy, his first album, which I had, Heat Treatment, was an excellent album, top to bottom. He was sort of on Vertigo, but not. It is swell, but it's not. He yes, he sort of was like a Van Morrison for his time. I'm not saying he sounded like Van. He was sort of like he was classy. So anyway, at 11:52, I've got to go.